When you picture a rock star, what comes to mind? Probably wild parties, roaring crowds, maybe even a little bit of glorious madness, right? But some of the most captivating stories aren't about the loud public chaos. They're about the quiet battles fought inside, about minds so brilliant they burn out too soon. Today we're peeling back the curtain on one of those lives, a life tragically cut short, yet one that scorched an unforgettable mark on music and culture, the enigmatic, intensely private world of Ian Kevin Curtis. To truly understand Ian Curtis, we need to step back in time to the gray post-industrial landscape of 1970s Britain. It was an era of stark contrast. Economic hardship and social unrest simmered beneath the surface, while the vibrant, rebellious spirit of punk rock exploded, offering an outlet for frustration and a craving for authenticity. Ian Kevin Curtis was born on July 15, 1956 in Stretford, Lancashire, England, the first child of Kevin and Doreen Curtis. He grew up in a working-class family in Macclesfield, Cheshire, a town that, while seemingly ordinary, held its own quiet struggles and aspirations. From a young age, Ian displayed an impressive intellect and a deep love for learning, particularly poetry. At just 11 years old, he earned a scholarship to the prestigious King's School, an independent school in Macclesfield. There, he honed his literary interests and garnered numerous academic awards, marking him as a bright, promising student. Yet, even in his youth, there was an undercurrent of restlessness and a hint of the darkness that would later define his art. As a teenager, unable to afford the music he craved, he'd regularly pilfer records from the local shops, stuffing them under his long gray coat, a small act of rebellion against the constraints of his world. This wasn't just about music. It was about a yearning for something more, a hunger for experience that would define his brief, intense life. This rebellious streak wasn't always harmless. One harrowing, rarely discussed incident from his teenage years offers a stark glimpse into the risks he was willing to take and the vulnerabilities that lay beneath his quiet exterior. As part of a social program, Curtis and his friends visited elderly residents. During these visits, they began stealing prescription medications, which they then used recreationally. At the age of 16, after taking a large dose of stolen Largactil, Curtis was found unconscious in his bedroom by his father. He was rushed to the hospital to have his stomach pumped, a near-fatal incident that served as a chilling precursor to the battles he would later face. This brush with death so early in his life undoubtedly left its mark, perhaps fueling his fascination with mortality and the darker aspects of human experience. He briefly studied history and theology at St. John's College, but quickly dropped out, opting instead for a series of jobs. He worked at a record store in Manchester, a fitting start for a future music icon, before moving into various civil service positions. He eventually became an assistant disablement resettlement officer, a role that involved helping people with disabilities find employment. This gave him a unique glimpse into the struggles and vulnerabilities of others, a theme that would subtly weave its way into his lyrical output, adding layers of empathy and stark realism. It was a mundane existence, perhaps, but one that provided a stark contrast to the explosive creativity that was about to define his life. Ian Curtis's life was a whirlwind of creativity, burgeoning fame, and profound personal turmoil. He married his girlfriend, Deborah Woodruff, in August 1975, when they were both just 19. They lived initially with Ian's grandparents, later moving into their own home on Barton Street in Macclesfield. Their daughter, Natalie, arrived on April 16, 1979, seemingly completing the picture of a young, upwardly mobile family. Yet beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. His entry into the music scene was almost accidental, born from a shared love of punk and a desire to escape the mundane. After seeing the Sex Pistols play, a seminal moment for many young people in Manchester at the time, he joined forces with Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook, and Stephen Morris. They initially formed a band called Warsaw, before settling on the evocative, unsettling name Joy Division in early 1978. The name, drawn from the 1953 novel The House of Dolls, referred to a section of concentration camps where Jewish women were held for sexual slavery, a stark choice that immediately set them apart from their peers and hinted at the dark, weighty themes that would permeate their music. Ian quickly became the band's sole lyricist, and his words were unlike anything else. Described as intellectual and obsessively self-analytical, his lyrics were dark, poetic, and ambiguous, allowing listeners to project their own meanings onto them. He kept a notebook filled with reserve lyrics, pulling them out when the right melody came along. This meticulous approach to his craft, combined with his haunting baritone and utterly unique stage presence, made Joy Division a phenomenon. His lyrics often explored themes of despair, alienation, and control, reflecting not only his inner world, but also the brooding atmosphere of late 70s Britain. Their collaboration with Tony Wilson, the visionary founder of Factory Records, began unusually. Curtis, frustrated that the band hadn't been invited onto Wilson's music TV show So It Goes, sent him an insulting letter. Intrigued by the audacity, Wilson not only invited them but later signed them to Factory, even famously using his life savings to fund their debut album, Unknown Pleasures. Despite their growing cult status and the critical acclaim for Unknown Pleasures, Ian remained perpetually short of money. After recording sessions, he'd often stay behind to clean the studio just to earn a little extra cash, a stark reminder of the grinding reality beneath the rising tide of fame. One lesser-known detail about Ian's recording process reveals his intense, almost ritualistic approach. When laying down vocals, he'd listen to the track once, then record in near darkness, singing only from memory, even with the lyrics written out on paper. Producer Martin Hannett embraced these quirks, using unconventional techniques to craft Joy Division's distinctive sound. For insight, he famously recorded Ian's vocals over a telephone line. For other tracks, he'd record the sound of shattering bottles, backward guitars, or even crispy potato chips. Hannett also notoriously kept the studio air conditioning so cold that Curtis's breath would visibly fog in the air as he sang, adding to the eerie, desolate atmosphere of their recordings. This meticulous attention to detail from both artist and producer contributed to Joy Division's unique, often unsettling sonic landscape. The band's most famous song, Love Will Tear Us Apart, released a month after Ian's death, became their only hit. The lyrics, heartbreakingly direct, spoke of the disintegration of his marriage to Deborah. And it was this marriage that became another source of immense pressure, exacerbating his already fragile mental state. Ian had started dating Deborah Woodruff in December 1972 when they were both just 16, a whirlwind teenage romance that led to their surprisingly early marriage on August 23, 1975, less than 3 years later. They were young, perhaps naive, about the complexities of adult relationships, especially when thrust into the escalating demands of a touring musician's life. Deborah often felt left behind, struggling with Ian's increasingly withdrawn nature and his deep immersion in his artistic world. Their home, once a sanctuary, began to feel like a cage for both of them, burdened by unspoken tensions and growing emotional distance. In 1979, during a European tour, Ian met Annick Honoré, a Belgian journalist and music promoter. What began as a professional relationship quickly deepened into an affair. Ian was torn by immense guilt. despite his marriage to Deborah having become cold and distant, a source of unhappiness for years. Anik, in later interviews, maintained their relationship was largely platonic, based on a profound intellectual and emotional connection rather than a physical one. However, Deborah unequivocally stated in her memoir, Touching from a Distance, that it was a deeply emotional and sexual affair, causing her immense pain and further eroding the foundations of their marriage. This liaison further isolated Ian from his bandmates, making him appear aloof, preoccupied, and difficult to connect with. The internal conflict, caught between his loyalty to his wife and child and his intense connection with Anik, weighed heavily on him, contributing significantly to his emotional decline and leading Deborah to begin divorce proceedings in early 1980. His final live performance with Joy Division was on May 2, 1980, at Birmingham University. It included the only known live performance of Ceremony, a song later released by New Order, and the last song Ian ever performed on stage was Digital. The lights were undoubtedly low, a necessary precaution, for by then his health was failing dramatically. The audience often witnessed his struggles firsthand, sometimes mistaking his physical distress for an intense artistic expression. The private joys and struggles of Ian Curtis were inextricably linked to his worsening health. In late 1978, he began suffering from epileptic seizures, receiving a formal diagnosis on January 23, 1979. His condition was severe, requiring multiple strong medications. The constant adjustment of these drugs led to distressing side effects, including extreme mood swings, paranoia, and a deepening sense of despair, all of which only compounded his already fragile mental state. Tragically, Ian often ignored medical advice, continuing to drink, smoke, and maintain an irregular sleep schedule. All factors known to exacerbate epilepsy and undermine the effectiveness of his medication. His epilepsy became an inescapable, albeit horrifying, part of his stage persona. His distinctive, almost spastic dancing, often referred to by the press as the dead fly dance, was eerily similar to the movements he made during a grand mal seizure. In fact, during Joy Division's live shows in 1979 and 1980, Ian would collapse on stage multiple times, often needing to be carried off. The band, acutely aware of the danger, banned strobe lights from their performances and ensured there were always people backstage ready to assist him. The raw, almost violent energy of his performance, fueled by his illness, was both captivating and deeply unsettling, creating an uncomfortable tension between artistic expression and genuine physical suffering. Audiences were often left unsure if they were witnessing a brilliant act of performance art or a man in genuine distress. Beyond the physical toll, the pressures mounted: the breakdown of his marriage, the guilt of his affair, the relentless touring schedule, the burgeoning fame, and the growing expectations placed on him as the band's frontman. He descended into a deep depression, and his mental health deteriorated rapidly. The psychological burden of his condition, coupled with the emotional turmoil, pushed him to his breaking point. In April 1980, he made his first suicide attempt, overdosing on barbiturates. After taking the pills, he called Deborah, not out of regret, but fear that he hadn't taken enough and would suffer brain damage. Deborah, horrified, called for an ambulance. This cry for help, though desperate, highlighted his internal conflict and perhaps a desperate hope for intervention. Looking back, those closest to him saw the signs, though perhaps not the full, horrifying picture. Deborah stated that he had told her many times he didn't intend to live past his early 20s, a chilling prophecy that echoed in her mind after his death. Lindsay Reed, Tony Wilson's wife, recalled Ian confiding in her about his belief that the release of their second album, Closer, would represent an artistic peak he couldn't possibly surpass. He also expressed a deep fear that his epilepsy would prevent him from performing live any longer, robbing him of the very thing that gave his life meaning. These were cries for help, veiled in artistic or existential dread that perhaps no one fully grasped the gravity of at the time. The band was on the cusp of an American tour, a breakthrough that promised worldwide recognition, but for Ian, it was just another weight on his already overburdened shoulders. By May 1980, the immense strain of his epilepsy, depression, the crumbling marriage, and his general emotional fragility became unbearable for Ian. On the night before Joy Division's first American tour, a tour that promised to catapult them to international fame, he took his own life by hanging himself in his kitchen. He was just 23 years old. He left a letter for Deborah, reflecting on their life together and reaffirming his love despite his affair. The letter ended with a poignant observation that dawn was breaking, and he could hear the birds singing, a tragically beautiful and serene end to a life consumed by internal turmoil. In his final hours, he had watched Werner Herzog's 1977 film Scorched, a bleak tale of a street musician's struggles, and listened to Iggy Pop's 1977 album, The Idiot, a stark and solitary end to a life lived so intensely. On May 23, 1980, Ian Curtis was cremated at Macclesfield Crematorium, and his ashes interred in Macclesfield Cemetery, his gravestone bearing the iconic inscription, Ian Curtis, 18 to 580, and love will tear us apart. The stone itself was stolen in July 2008, a testament to his enduring impact, and later replaced with a new one bearing the same poignant inscription. The theft and replacement highlight the almost sacred status he holds for many fans, and the enduring power of his most famous lyric. Ian Curtis's death sent shockwaves through the music world, but it also cemented his legend. The remaining members of Joy Division honoring a pact they had made that they would cease as Joy Division if any member left, reformed as New Order, going on to achieve immense success and further shaping the post-punk and electronic music landscape of the 1980s. New Order's 1985 instrumental track Elegia is a powerful and haunting tribute to Ian, a mournful yet beautiful elegy. Other artists too, like Durruti Column, The Missing Boy, and Shoo Shoo, Ian Curtis wish list, have paid homage to him, reflecting his deep influence across genres. His influence is still seen today. The phrase, Ian Curtis Lives, has appeared on a wall in Wellington, New Zealand since 1980, periodically repainted or re-etched, a constant visual reminder of his lasting presence and the cult-like devotion he commands. His story has been brought to the screen twice. In Michael Winterbottom's 2002 film 24-Hour Party People, which broadly explored Tony Wilson and the Manchester music scene, and more intimately in Anton Corbijn's 2007 biopic Control. Control, based on Deborah Curtis's memoir, offered a raw, emotional portrayal of Ian's life, with his daughter Natalie even making a cameo as an extra, adding a layer of poignant authenticity. These films have helped introduce his story to new generations, ensuring his legacy continues to resonate. Even his childhood home at 77 Barton Street, the scene of his final moments, became a subject of public fascination. When it went up for sale in 2014, a crowdfunding campaign was launched to buy it and turn it into a museum dedicated to Ian Curtis and Joy Division. While the campaign fell short of its goal, businessman Hadar Goldman eventually purchased the house with the stated aim of transforming it into a Joy Division museum and a digital hub for musicians. As of 2024, that dream remains unfulfilled, but the desire speaks volumes about the emotional connection people feel to his story and the enduring power of his presence. Other intriguing remnants of his life surface occasionally. An Australian wine named Known Pleasures was dedicated to Ian Curtis and Joy Division, a testament to their enduring cultural footprint. A poem he wrote in primary school, An Epitaph for an Engineer, sold for £1,100 at auction in 2014. Even a kitchen table allegedly his at the time of his death caused a stir when it appeared on eBay in 2013 and 2015, highlighting the almost relic-like status of items connected to his tragic life. These fragments of his existence serve as poignant reminders of the man behind the music, a life cut short but eternally etched into cultural memory. Ian Curtis's life was a poignant exploration of vulnerability, creativity, and the crushing weight of internal demons. He was a poet of pain, a performer who channeled his suffering into art, leaving behind a body of work that resonates with an extraordinary emotional depth. His story reminds us of the fragile beauty of the human experience, how genius and torment can intertwine, and how even in profound darkness a powerful light can emerge, one that continues to illuminate and inspire generations. What do you find most compelling about Ian Curtis's legacy?